Well, hey there, and welcome back once again to the latest edition of Richard's Record Roundup. Now, this is going to be the biggest one yet, so obviously that would probably also theoretically make it the longest one yet. I have 33 albums to show you today, ranging from 1955 through 1986. I'm going to do my best to go through them as quickly as possible so that I don't make this video obscenely long, but I also want to give you as much information as I possibly can. So that said, let's get started. So like I said, 1955, this is Julie London. She died in the year 2000 of a heart attack. She was also a very heavy smoker, and she was also famous for her cigarette commercials, so there you go. But as far as I can tell, this is the first pressing of this. It has the turquoise label. It's really good. I mean, she was a pretty good singer. It's she's got kind of a smoky voice. No pun intended, but just happens to be that way. Here's the reverse side. It's, I guess you'd probably call them maybe standards. But she sings, in a seductive manner. But this is a really good album. This is an unbelievable shape. I mean, I don't see any ring wear on this thing at all. And it played pretty darn good as well. Next up, one of her contemporaries, I guess. This album is from 1958. It's obviously Doris Day. This is her greatest hits on Columbia Records. And as far as I can tell, this is also a first issue. It's got the 6I. This is what they call the Columbia I. So it's got the 6I label. This is in spectacular shape. This thing sounded flawless. I don't remember hearing any crackles or any kind of defects on it at all. It was just lovely. And this is in mono. Just I highly recommend this album if you're into this type of music. She's actually still alive as of the making of this video. She's 95 years old, and in April she will be 96. So next up, 1959. I actually thought this one was a little later when I first started investigating it. It looked to me like it was probably from the mid-60s, but this is from 1959. I know they're not a really desirable album. It's Percy Faith, but it was really good. This is also first issue and has the Columbia 6I label. I do recommend this one as well. Here's the reverse. And Percy Faith, band leader, he died in 1976. So, next up, the Mills Brothers. Now they are one of my favorites. And this is an awesome album. This is from 1959, but this is in stereo, ultra stereophonic recording. And in fact, that's how you can tell that this is a first pressing. This would be early stereo. Because I don't remember exactly what year the first stereo records were released, but it was in the late 50s as far as I know. So, next up, this one, couldn't find a whole lot of information on it. At first I was going to guess that it was probably the early 60s, but when I did a little research on the cha-cha, I found out that it was first popular in the early to mid 50s, around 53, 55, somewhere around there. So I'm going to place this kind of based on that and based on maybe the girl's dress and hairdo, and plus on the back there's also some contemporary albums with some other, especially this one. I'm kind of put it in the late 50s. So I'm putting it right around like 1959, I think. That's my best guess. When I listened to side one, I was kind of on the fence about keeping it, but I figured, actually, the whole reason I picked this up, if I didn't like it, was because I have a lot of frames, and I was going to put this one in a frame on the wall if it wasn't something that I decided to listen to again. But when I listened to side 2, I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. And it's in good shape. It's Cuban music, which I kind of knew when I listened to it. You can kind of, if you're into this kind of music, you can kind of pick out the little nuances, and you can kind of tell difference between like Mexican music and Cuban music and stuff like that. The other thing about this record is it's on a label never heard of. It's called Golden Tone, and that always reminds me of the Little Golden Records, like it's a children's record, but it's not. But they're not even a related company. But it's just kind of, I see that and I think of children's records. And next up, this one's a little interesting because this is a UK pressing, and it's from 1961. It's in stereo, and it's, of course, Connie Francis. She sings songs from motion pictures. It's on the MGM label, and you can't tell from the picture, but I knew there was something odd about it when I first got it because the jacket felt very thin compared to what you're used to on a LP jacket, cardboard jacket, and that a lot of times indicates a foreign pressing. And sure enough, it certainly was. It was this, like I said, is a UK pressing. She's 80 years old, and she's actually still performing. And she's been in show business since 1943. So the other thing about this is I always felt that she was a bit, or at least now anyway, underrated and underappreciated. I mean, obviously she was a huge star back when this album came out, but she's really suffered since then, and I think she deserves to be appreciated more than she is. Next up, again, 1961, the McGuire Sisters. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I showed you a McGuire Sisters album in a previous record roundup, and I had stated that I thought they were all alive. Well, I didn't do a whole lot of research on that one. On this one I did. And unfortunately, I do not know which one she is, but the one named Dorothy, she had Parkinson's disease, and she did pass away in 2012. This is your typical McGuire Sisters stuff. Satisfying, but typical. This is in stereo. You gotta love their Laura Petrie hairdos from the Dick Van Dyke Show era. I mean, that just puts it smack dab right in where the date of it is, 1961. I mean, you wouldn't even have to look it up almost, just look at the hairdo. And here's the reverse side, if you want to take a quick peek at that before we move on to the next, which just also happens to be from 1961. Brenda Lee. That makes our third girl in a row. All contemporaries of each other, obviously. This is a little mysterious. Maybe that's not the right word, but there was no stereo pressing of this. This is hi-fi or mono, whatever you want to call it. And this was issued in 1960 as Grandma, What Great Songs You Sang. Then, in 1961, they did the whole album with the same catalog number and retitled it this, Brenda Lee Sings Songs Everybody Knows. It's the same album. A different cover, but exactly the same contents and catalog number, which is odd. I don't know why they did that just 1 year later. Maybe the other one wasn't selling well. She's also still alive and still active at 73 years old. She was very young when she started. Let me show you the reverse of that before I forget. And there you go. Now next up, we jump up a couple of years to 1963. Now, I don't really think I need to give any information on Lawrence Welk. Everybody pretty much knows who he is. This is stereo. I've kind of gained an appreciation for Lawrence Welk music. You know, when I was a kid, he was kind of, not cool, and that was like old people listened to. But of course I knew who he was. But as I've aged and started getting back into records, I can really appreciate this kind of music. It's actually very entertaining. I could see why he was popular and why he still is. So, next up, we stay in 1963. Hey, kind of like going along the same route here, Liberace. He truly was a master pianist, and he was probably one of the best, if not the best, at least if we couple that with his entertaining abilities. It's a pretty good album if you like Liberace stuff. This was also recorded in stereo. This one here is high fidelity mono, but it had different catalog number for the stereo release. There's the reverse side. This is also on Dot Records, along with the Lawrence Welk stuff. In fact, here's the album I just showed you right there. And here's the Mills Brothers album. We're still in 1963. This one I picked up, and I never heard of them. The Chantays, or Chantays. I'm not exactly sure how the name of the group is pronounced. I'd call it the Chantays. I just figured this was probably like Lawrence Welk type stuff. It actually surprised me. I mean, you put it on the record and kind of expect to hear, I hate to call it lame, but I mean, that's kind of what you usually use when you talk about like Lawrence Welk type music to many people. But this is surf rock, and it's really good. And this is the first pressing as well. And believe it or not, this group is still playing, but one of the members has passed away in the meantime. Again, staying in 1963 and staying with the kind of surf rock genre, we go to the Astronauts. Now, when I picked this up with a couple of other albums. In fact, the next one I picked up at the same garage sale. I thought they were the same artist. I didn't realize that. I'll just show you real quick. The Ventures. I thought this was the Ventures as well, but it's not. And they did have one other one at this garage sale too, but it was really beat up and scratched, so I left it there. But anyway, this is pretty cool surf music as well. This is on RCA, while the Ventures is on the Dalton label, which is a subsidiary of Liberty Records. This one, like I said, I really enjoyed this one. I liked it a lot. As I showed you a quick preview there, the next one up is the Ventures. This is from 1964, though. This is what they call space surf rock. This has a lot of sci-fi elements to the selections on this album, like Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits, One Step Beyond, TV stuff. A little tidbit, they call it Out of Limits. Originally, they released this single as Outer Limits, and they got in trouble because it really is not associated with the TV show The Outer Limits, and they changed the name to Out of Limits. But this is a really cool album. Now, unfortunately, all the original members are dead, except for one. His name's Don Wilson, but he did retire from touring, but I guess he still records. So, staying in 1964, we got, I guess, what you want to maybe call lame music again. This is easy listening. This is Jan Garber and his orchestra on Decca Records. This is in stereo, in case you didn't notice it up here. And these are all like great standards. They're like songs from the World War II era. It's the reverse. He died in 1977. Okay, let's jump to 1967. Hey, look who's back. Liberace. And this was the only pressing on Dot Records with this catalog number, and this is in stereo, as boldly emblazoned across the top of the album there. This is Liberace Goes 60s Mod. You gotta look at all that paisley and psychedelic looking lettering on there, and the shirt. And he, of course, died of AIDS in 1987. Here's the reverse. This is in pretty good shape. It's actually not bad. Let's move up to 1968. I think this is a first issue. I can't tell for sure. I pick up early Tom Jones records now, even though at first I really I shouldn't say I didn't like them because I didn't know, but as I've acquired some and listened to them, is really good. Let's stay in 1968 and go to Simon and Garfunkel. And this is a first pressing. This has the 360 degree, that's what they call it because it's written on there, 360 degrees of stereo sound or something on the label. This was originally issued with a poster inside, which I do not have. And it was only on this pressing, or whatever you want to call it, release, there was some that had the poster notification as part of the printing, but this one was only on a sticker on the original shrink wrap, so of course that's missing. These lyrics are on the back on this. So let's jump to 1970 and Miss Dusty Springfield. Sadly, she passed away in 1999. She was only 59 years old and she had breast cancer, but she had a lovely voice. And I especially liked the 1980s duet, or whatever you want to call it, backup vocals that she did on the Pet Shop Boys' What Have I Done to Deserve This? That's like one of my favorite songs. And there she is. This album's not bad. I don't think there's any hits on it, but not bad. So now we jump to 1971. Now, those of you who are familiar with this album may say, 1971? This isn't from 1971. This is from the 60s. And technically, you would be correct. The original was released in 1967. But this is one of the many, 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 many reissues of this album. There's 300 plus different variants of this, including reissues and different pressing plants and different country editions. But as far as I can tell from my research, this is the 1971 reissue. And here this has the Gold Record Award imprinted on the actual jacket. Here's the reverse. This is on the butterfly label and sleeve, which I will show you in a second. Of course, if you're familiar with the Doors, you know that Jim Morrison died in 1971 at a very young age. Ray Manzarek is the other one that passed away in 2013, but up until that point, the other three were still alive, and they did continue after he died, and they thought about replacing him, but they eventually decided against that. But they did disband in 1973 effectively, and that was the end of them, although there were various reunions and get-togethers of several of the members. But let me show you that. Just so you know, here's the inner sleeve and the label. That is the reissue edition that this is. And you see who's coming up next. This is a 1972. This is a first pressing. The way you can tell is this is on the blue Camden RCA label on Dynaflex, which I've gone over in previous videos. This still has the original shrink wrap on it with the original sticker on here. It was marked down on sale or whatever at $1.99. This also, if you see down here, this is the edition, first edition, that has the special bonus photo inside, which I will show you. And it's still in there. It's a there's the reverse of it. I was telling you to get that album now. I have that on CD. And that's a good album. And I don't think I showed you the reverse of this yet. It says coming in 1973, Elvis on the Aloha from Hawaii. That's also another good album. I do have quite a few of these other Elvis albums as well. Alrighty. So, now we jump up to 1975, and this is the country group, the Statler Brothers. They retired in 2002, but this is the first issue of their basically greatest hits, I guess you'd call it, since it's the best of. I think this is the first issue, and this is a really good album too. It's got all their hits on it. Bed of Roses, of course, that's like one of my favorites. Jump up a year to 1976, and Leo Sayer. Believe it or not, this is his fourth album, but I don't think he really had a hit before this. And there's like 50 versions of this album too. There's 3 really, really good songs on here. It's a pretty good album, too. There's the reverse there. And, man, just listening to this really takes you back. It almost seems like yesterday, but it was 1976. That's over 40 years ago. So 1977 now, Cliff Richard never really was as popular in the United States as he was across the rest of the world. Probably Europe was, I would imagine it was probably most popular in Europe. Which coincidentally, this is an Italian pressing of this. You wouldn't know it because everything on it, on the record and on the jacket, is in English. That's a pretty good album, actually. It's the same jacket as the UK release. I'm not sure exactly why, or if it had something to do with just being Europe or whatever. But the US one's totally different. It doesn't look anything like this. And a little fun fact, he was born in India in 1940. Although he's English, he's not of any Indian heritage. It's just, if you're familiar with history, you know that England once ruled India. And now we go to 1979, to the first of 2 Shaun Cassidy albums that I have to show you today. This is his live album, his only live album. And it's his second to last album. It's not bad. There's the reverse. It's got a lot of his hits on here. I mean, he wasn't untalented. Just he was kind of a fad, you know. He was popular and then he wasn't, just like his brother. And then this is his last album. It's called Wasp. It's from 1980. I kind of like this cover. It's kind of neat. I don't know why, just for some reason. And the reverse is pretty much just a mirror image of the front. It was okay. You know, it was his last one of new stuff. I think he had a greatest hits released in the 90s or something, but this was his last gasp while he was still popular. And he did a cover of David Bowie's Rebel Rebel on this, and some other recognizable songs. But that's probably the highlight of the album. All right, let's jump to 1983. This is a compilation album. It's Motown, obviously. And it's 25 number 1 hits from 25 years of Motown. As you can see, they also include Gordy Records and Tamla Records in their Motown umbrella. And this is a 2-record set. So it has plenty of songs on it. I think you'd know every single song on here. This is just loaded with smash hits. It's not a gatefold cover. They shoved both records into one's jacket instead of usually when there's 2 records, many albums open up like a book and one record goes in one side, one goes in the other. But not this one. This was like a little cheaper release. But there's no Motown 25 logo on here, which you'd think it would be. Maybe they just hadn't come out with it yet. Let's jump a year to 1984. Now this one I only included just because of the one cover song on here. I actually don't even like this album. It was something that I acquired in a box of records. It wasn't something that I picked out, deliberately bought. It's heavy metal, which I don't really like to begin with. There's very few heavy metal songs that I like. But this is called The Blitz, and the reason for that is because they do a cover of the Ballroom Blitz, which was a hit for Sweet. And also later, Tia Carrera did a cover on it on Wayne's World, if you recall that. But, look, they ruined it. It was too heavy, and it didn't sound anything. I mean, obviously it was recognizable, but it didn't sound anything like the original, and I didn't like it. And since I really don't care too much for heavy metal to begin with, this will be a record that I will either sell or give away or whatever. But I just wanted to show that to you. Crocus. Alrighty. Stay in 1984, we got Kool and the Gang. Now this I really liked because at the time, this is the kind of music that I was really into. This MTV Top 40 kind of club music. Funny thing is, on this, you got side 2 has 3 totally unknown and forgettable songs, but side 1 has 4 major hits: Emergency, Fresh, Misled, which is one of my favorites, and Cherish. So, I mean, you could pretty much just like not ever listen to side 2 again, but side 1 is awesome. Alrighty. Let's go up a year to 1985. Commodores. You may remember that Lionel Richie was a member of the Commodores, and he left to go solo. And that kind of left them floundering and wondering what to do, but this was probably their biggest album. They hit with Night Shift, which, if you're not familiar, was a tribute to Marvin Gaye, and it was a major hit, which also got them their first Grammy. Maybe their only one, I'm not sure. I didn't research it that deep, but it's a pretty good song. It's actually not a bad album either. Now we go to 1985. This is the same year that Word Up came out, but I'm not sure which record came first. I think this came before Word Up. This is pretty good if you like funk. It's called Attack Me With Your Love. It's by Cameo, in case you didn't see that on the sticker. It's got 2 different versions on it. It's got the 7-inch version and then an extended version. Staying in 1985, Freddy Jackson. Oh, I did not know this is his first album. And this has a lot of good songs on it. I was actually surprised I enjoyed it because I'm not usually that big on, really heavy soul and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's got songs on here like You Are My Lady, Rock Me Tonight. You'd probably recognize a few more of them, too. Unfortunately, on this one, the first song on side 1 has a skip in it for some reason, but the rest of the album is flawless. This is from 1985 again. It has some decent hits, including the title song, Rhythm of the Night. Little fun fact, DeBarge are from Detroit, and they are a family. That's their family name. And, of course, this is El DeBarge, and he went off on his own, effectively disbanding the group. I was never heard from again. But if you look at this crazy, they look like they're insane. I mean, look at this 80s crazy hairdos and one left. This one will elicit many chuckles, I'm sure. This is, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but it's Matt Southard or Southard, and the album's called The Cat. This guy is a joke. I mean, I don't know who he thinks he is. He's got leopard skin pants and shirt on, and they're like tight, like shiny. I don't know what kind of material that is. And some weird tuxedo jacket with tails and a bow tie tied around his neck with the wife beater tank top underneath that, with this hideous 80s mullet or whatever he got there on his hair, sitting on a Rolls Royce, which I'm positive is not his, based on his talent or lack of in this album. It's 6 songs. They call it a mini album where I looked it up. I was going to save this one for last, but it turned out to be the latest in chronological order anyway. So, I mean, what can I really say? I mean, you should be able to tell just from looking at this that I mean, look at that hairdo. But what I was going to say was they're as far as I can tell, I didn't recognize all the songs, but about half of them I knew he did covers or remakes or whatever you want to call it. In the Ghetto and Kentucky Woman, I'll Meet You Halfway. But it's just awful. It is just atrocious. And let me read you a comment that I found from someone that was selling this album on eBay. So here's the listing that I found on eBay. Or not on eBay, I found it doing a Google search on WorthPoint, whatever the hell that is. But it says it was from eBay, but I don't know when. I don't know how old, how far back these searches go. But anyway, I'm kind of thinking this guy must have known this guy personally or known of him, because his comments are kind of almost a little bit personal. Like I said, you kind of get the feeling that he knows this guy. In case you can't read this, I'll read it to you. It says, Matt Southard, The Cat LP, 1985. Private Press, Arizona local bonehead, overproduced guitar hard rock with all-time delusions of grandeur cover art. Private as all hell, waits till the last song to go down in a heap of flames. A spicy reggae cover of In the Ghetto. And I have to agree with this fella. This is just terrible, 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 terrible. But it's got such a cover on it that I just have to keep it. I might end up putting this one on the wall for some reason, just because it's just so off the wall and over the top. I mean, in case you didn't notice, it says Rockstar on his, not his Rolls-Royce license plate. So anyway, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that trip through time there. And I know I promised toy video last time. I haven't been able to get stuff together to get any of the toy projects that I want to video ready to go yet. So I had this stack of records piling up, and I just had to get those out of the way so I could file them away. Oh, also, I've also started a Facebook page dedicated to Richard's Toy Room. So if you want to join up there, you'll hear about the latest videos, because that's where I'll post the link to them first. Click on the subscribe button, and I keep seeing people talking about the bell icon. I don't know what that's for, but if you want to click on that too, I guess, go ahead. And we'll see you soon.